Percy Jackson is one of the main characters in the Riordanverse. In my previous video of all of Percy's abilities, it's clear that Percy is one of the most powerful demigods in these books. He manages to defeat many enemies and survive life-threatening quests all the time. From these moments, I made a list of the top 10 most powerful Percy moments, and in this video, I'll be going through them all. Last thing before getting into it, spoiler warning. And with that, let's get started. Number 10, the Chimera fight scene. This moment is one of the most iconic scenes from the first book of PJO, or The Lightning Thief. In this part of the book, Percy is on a quest to retrieve Zeus's Master Bolt, and he comes across the Chimera and Echidna. The PJO TV show changed this scene quite a bit, but what happens still sort of remains the same. However, for the sake of this video, I'm going by the book version because there are quite a bit of changes between the book and the show. Anyway, in the book, this is actually a pretty cool moment for Percy because he gets isolated in this scenario without any reassurance that Grover and Annabeth were there. He was left on the top floor of the Gateway Arch with just Echidna and the Chimera. In this scene, Percy has no training in combat as a demigod, and he was able to hold his own against a beast like the Chimera. I mean, look at this monster. It's deadly, and for a 12-year-old kid like Percy to fight, it's insane. Though Percy wasn't really able to kill it, what he does next is even crazier. He jumped out of the Gateway Arch and survived the fall into the Mississippi River despite how far that was. Though Poseidon did ultimately intervene here to make sure Percy was alright, this fight Percy had with the Chimera is still a good show of strength on Percy's part. Number 9, the Minotaur fight scene. This is another iconic moment from The Lightning Thief. Aside from the misdodged fight in the first chapter, this is one of the earliest monster fights Percy has, and it's already pretty epic. Like the Chimera scene earlier, this just shows how powerful Percy is at a young age, even without any combat training, because this time, he killed the Minotaur with nothing but his bare hands. He climbed the beast's shoulders and snapped its horn off. What made it even more insane was how he used the same horn to kill the Minotaur itself, which is pretty genius on Percy's part, because a Minotaur's horn is considered a spoil of war because of how deadly it is. He managed to do that with nothing but his bare hands and strength as a son of Poseidon. Like, this is an awesome scene. Number 8. Fighting the shades from the son of Neptune. Compared to the first two moments, this is sort of forgotten. This happens in the second book of the Heroes of Olympus with Percy, Hazel Levesque, and Frank Zhang. During this time, they were given a quest to free the god of death, Thanatos. Thanatos was captured by a giant named Alcyones, and the trio had to fight Alcyones. However, surrounding them all were these creatures called Shades sent by Gaia, and while Frank and Hazel were occupied with freeing Thanatos and fighting Alcyones, Percy was tasked to fight these Shades, and it was no joke of a job. These Shades were generated, and Percy was alone with it as Frank and Hazel were fighting their own battles. Percy fought against these creatures with his water powers and Riptide, and he won the fight. Percy managed to destroy these Shades and claim the Eagle of the Roman camp all on his own, and I think this is an underrated moment from the books. Number 7. Holding the Titan's Curse. From the name itself, it happens in the third book of PJO, or the Titan's Curse. Here, Percy and the gang are confronted by the Titan Lord Atlas, and a fight breaks out. In the chaos, Percy sees that the goddess Artemis was holding the way of the sky, or the Titan's Curse, and they needed Artemis' help. What Percy did next was a selfless act as he offered himself to carry the Titan's Curse. The Titan's Curse is essentially the thing that stops the sky from crashing into Earth, and it's not an easy task to carry this burden. In fact, a goddess like Artemis was struggling against the power of this curse, and how much more a 14-year-old demigod like Percy? Percy didn't care about the risk anymore, and for a few minutes, he managed to carry the Titan's Curse. It was an excruciating experience that some of his hair turned gray, but he pushed through with it for everyone. This is a huge moment because it shows Percy's selflessness as a hero and how powerful he really was to hold that kind of curse. Again, another great moment. Number 6. Exploding Mount St. Helens in the Battle of the Labyrinth. For this, let's get a bit of context as to what happened. Percy and Annabeth were in the labyrinth, and they were confronted by hellhounds. Thinking that they were both about to die, Annabeth quickly kissed Percy in the sense of a final goodbye to him. Percy was shocked as hell, but he managed to fight off some of the hellhounds. There were too many monsters, and to defeat them, Percy tried summoning water. This works, but it led to something nobody expected. Because Percy used his powers to a huge extent to fight off the Hellhounds, it triggered an even stronger ability inside him. He basically caused a volcanic explosion as Mount St. Helens exploded. If that's not crazy enough, Percy was launched into the air and crash-landed on an island called Ogygia. He managed to sustain the fall of who knows how much feet in the air, and he survived despite the explosion and the sudden fall. This scene is a huge deal because it shows that Percy's powers are way more than just controlling water. He also has the ability to cause volcanic eruptions and survive crazy falls, which is pretty impressive. Number 5. Fighting the god of war, Ares. Another iconic moment from the Lightning Thief. In this scene, Percy and the gang realized that they've been played because Ares framed them up. With this, they confronted him in Santa Monica Beach, and it led up to Percy and Ares having a fight. The thought of attacking the god of war at the age of 12 is already an insane thing, but what happens in the fight is even cooler. Percy attacks Ares, and though Ares manages to get the upper hand for a bit, Percy doesn't back down. Instead, he fought back like the hero he was and managed to wound Ares' heel. He made a god bleed at the age of 12 without any training whatsoever. Like, that's already a feat of skill that not many demigods can do, showing just how powerful Percy is. Number 4. Confronting Kronos in The Last Olympian. Kronos is the Titan Lord and the main antagonist in the first series. The 5 books center on defeating him, and Percy was able to do this in the last book. Percy, Annabeth, and Grover went to Mount Olympus, where Kronos was, and they fought him. Annabeth was occupied because of fighting Ethan Nakamura, and Grover had to help her. It was up to Percy to fight against Kronos, and this was a huge moment. Percy fought the Titan Lord with nothing but Riptide. Kronos, on the other hand, had his own powers and the Achilles' curse that Luke had, and it was an epic scene of Percy fighting for his life. Percy managed to be on the same level of sword fighting as Kronos and Luke at the same time. Percy's sword fighting is one of the most remarkable skills he has because he managed to be in the same level as Luke Castellan, a demigod who was considered the best sword fighter in camp from the last century. Percy only trained for like 4 summers before this epic fight, and he was on top of the game. Though Percy didn't win the fight against Kronos, as Annabeth had to intervene, the fact that Percy managed to fight the Titan Lord one-on-one for a while is a huge moment that proves how strong Percy became throughout the books. Number 3. Fighting the Aryan in Tartarus and the House of Hades. The Aryan are creatures that remind you of horrible things you've done in the past by making you experience those actions. They were the monsters who gave you curses for you to suffer, and Percy and Annabeth encountered them in Tartarus. Given this background on the Aryan, they're obviously one of the hardest monsters to beat because the more you attack them, the more you get injured. Added to this, there was no option to back away because they were going to attack you either way. With this thought, Percy fought them all to save him and Annabeth. It was so painful to him as he endured curse after curse through injury after injury just to get them away from Annabeth. There's an intense scene in the book as Percy didn't back down and fought against them despite the odds of survival. It highlights not just Percy's bravery and fighting skills, but also his determination and perseverance just to survive. Number 2. The Battle of the Doors of Death. When I say this moment, I mean Percy and Annabeth's side in Tartarus. To get out of Tartarus, Percy and Annabeth had to go to the Doors of Death, and they were confronted by so many monsters. Percy and Annabeth had to team up to fight them, and this after they confronted enemy after enemy in their journey. They were both exhausted, but again, Percy's determination and bravery brought him to fight for the two of them. He killed monster after monster to protect them both, and in the end, they were successful. And now this brings us to our number 1 moment. Percy controlling the poison in Tartarus. Again, this is part of the House of Hades. As son of Poseidon, Percy has full control over bodies of water. That's made very clear by every mention we get of him in the books, but nobody was prepared for this scene in particular. Percy and Annabeth met the goddess of poison Achilles, and Achilles tricked them. She attacked them, and Percy had to step up again to save both him and Annabeth. Percy concentrated and then controlled the poison that Achilles attacked them with. He managed to use the goddess's powers against her, and he was surprised at this much power. He started to almost enjoy this amount of control and power he had over Achilles, and he choked her with her own element. Like, this was an absolutely insane moment for all book readers like me, and this lands as the number 1 most insane and powerful moment Percy has, because it went beyond his water powers and allowed him to control more liquids like poison. Also, attacking a goddess isn't easy, let alone using her own powers against her. Percy almost killed her, and the only reason he stopped was because of Annabeth telling him that it was too much. And that's the top 10 most powerful Percy moments. From all of this, it's undeniable that Percy is one of the most powerful demigods of his generation. He manages to use his intelligence, combat skills, and powers to save everyone for the greater good, and that makes him one of the greatest characters in these books. So how about you? What's your favorite Percy moment? Let me know in the comments down below.